the title here. And I could have automated those, but I wanted to customize each menu. And of course that has a unique picture in there too. So when you create a page, basically you start with page.php and the general code it has in it. Save it to a new name, and you could name it something like page squirrel. If you use page hyphen squirrel, how do I explain this right? If I'm in the dashboard and I create a page called WordPress links and resources. Here, this little bit here that's highlighted in yellow is sort of the page slug. So it's sort of the short name for this particular page. If I wanted to create a custom template for this exact page, then I could name it page hyphen WordPress hyphen links hyphen resources.php. Or I could name it by the page number. And in the dashboard, if you hover over edit there, you'll see at the very bottom, that's an easy way to find the page number. Every page, post, anything that you create gets a number assigned to it. Right. Yeah, so let's we'll open one up. Yeah, so up here you'll see the page number there. Of course, sometimes after you've created like 30-some pages, it's hard to, you're trying to go back and look, and it's like, okay, page 2, 3, 37 was the one about, dogs, which one's which. So if you name a page, it's kind of convenient. And what you do is you just put this at the top of your page file, and we'll look at one of those. Don't mock me for using Dreamweaver. I use it in code mode, and I just have it, so. Well, basically, I figure I want to try Panic Coda at some point, but this is here, and so I use it. Let's open up. Okay. Now here, I use different numbering or different naming conventions just for examples. So this is page 13. Originally, the concept was that it would work for page 13, but I also wanted it to work for the children of page 13. So instead of just relying on it being numbered, I named it page-plugins. Everything else on the page is pretty similar to my other pages, except I've also specified that I wanted to use sidebar plugins, which, go back here. So this would be the page for that. And in the dashboard, what's handy about this is if you've named a page, when you're creating pages in the dashboard, when you're adding your content, you can decide what page you're going to use for the template. So here I happen to be in the About site, so this is a parent level page, so it's one of the main menu items, but then here I can choose between all the templates I've got. And it's listing all of the ones that I've given individual names to. And I think that's easy from a user standpoint, in that you don't have to remember the IDs and the slugs and the everything. You can just sort of pick what's appropriate. And I just try and name them logically so I'll recognize what goes with what. Okay, it's 11:18 and I'm way behind, so to confuse you more, I'm going to try and work faster. So my hope is that even if none of what I say makes sense, you can come back to the site later and dig deeper into it, because there's just so much to cover, and it's hard to explain several hours of stuff in 90 minutes. So I'll go through a few more of these template files. Custom post templates are different than custom page templates. So the page ones you can name or number or whatever. with your individual posts, it always uses single.php, and that is the default for your individual blog posts. But you may have different categories of posts that you want to handle differently. For example, I'm working on a site for Case for Heidi there in the black and purple, where we're going to have a section of what we're calling stories, but also sections of news items. And I wanted those to be able to display with different menus. I didn't want to have some ginormous menu on the side that was common to all the blog post pages. But if I could create different files for each, that will help me control, what goes where. So instead of just naming them, though, what you do with these is you actually save your single.php file as one of the versions you want. So, for example, singlestories.php would be one of the versions I want. And then you basically use this query that you put in your single.php file. So this bit of code replaces everything that would normally be in single.php. And you basically say, if it's in one of these categories, and this goes by category number, use this template. Else, if it's in one of these categories, use this template. And then for everything else, you create sort of a generic one, which I call single normal. And that way it'll sort of go through and assign everyone to the right version. So that's an easier way of customizing things so that you're not stuck with every blog post being the exact same format. Let's go over some of your common files. A lot of the files in here are include files. So I presume most of you are familiar with either PHP includes or server-side includes of some sort. Very handy for including common elements to a page. Header.php is the big one in WordPress. It has a lot of the functionality you need to make things happen. You could just use your header code in there, but I usually include everything kind of down to about here through the menu in header.php. That way I don't have to have multiple menu files running around. Oh, sure. Yeah. And for these would be like normal PHP include. So you just include the little bit of code that you wanted to use. So if we wanted to add a picture of a dancing penguin someplace with a little slogan somewhere, just make a little PHP file for that, and then include it wherever you want it to be. Sidebar.php is generally. Mm-hmm.
Dashboard, you show up your dashboard, or is it strictly hand coded?
Yeah. Widgets, right.
So widgets are amazing.
Right. So this area here, this is my sidebar. In this case, I've done separate sidebars for each section, but I manually edited my sidebars here to some degree. But I could have just made widgets for all the things in here, or for most of the things in there, in which case then you would be able to do that sort of drag and drop.
Yeah, we're speaking in another language, dual languages.
Yeah, I don't use a lot of widgets, mostly because I tinker too much with customizing things. But I used one just for the sake of example in the blog area. This part here is a widget that brings in your tags as a tag cloud. And to do that, we'll open, we look at sidebar blog.php. This is the code for that sidebar, so it looks like, any sort of normal include. Let's see.
basic settings that you remove it as a flat size. So there's a couple steps in. Yeah, preferences.
You're gonna come back to that QR code though, right?
Oh, yeah, you'll be able to take a picture.
Yeah, you're right there, 5, just on the right, you can bump up the size of the font.
No, that was probably the default for.
Wait, there was a fixed font thing in that last one.
That was a good place.
That's it.
Wow, it's only 7 point.
There
Oh,
we go.
yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. I'm ready for a beer.
Okay, so this is the sidebar that was used in the blog, and I usually customize these a lot by hand because I kind of want to decide what goes where, and also because I create a lot of index files, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So I want to sort of, I'm adding little different things that WordPress is not going to figure out my theories on why I put things where. So I just sort of manually create this menu, and then the same menu applies to all the pages in the blog, so I only have to do it once. But that's just sort of standard HTML coding, except for this is telling you to start with the blog URL, and then this is the rest of the name. You could hand code this and do the exact path that you wanted to use. And actually, if you do that, once you've built everything, if you replace it with the exact path, that can help your load time. Here I've got, on blogs you have your usual subscription information, so the links to the RSS feeds, etc. Here, this is another include file, is your standard search form, so we've just included that. And I have that in all the sidebars. And then down at the bottom, this is what you add to tell it to include a widget. Now in this case, I decided to use the secondary widget from the site. And basically it's just saying if there is something in the secondary widget, it will bring in everything in the secondary widget area. And then in the WordPress dashboard, I could drag any widgets I wanted into it, and then my sidebar would be huge and clunky and confusing to read. Yeah.
Yeah, you just can't believe it. The thing to keep in mind here is most of the time when you get a template, that stuff's already defined. So there's 2 stages here. You're
Right.
either using WordPress with an existing template, and their widget areas are defined. And you'll see places say like 60 widget areas, 200,000 widget areas. You only need like 5 or 10. But then what she's talking about is where you're defining the widget area yourself. And it really is easy to define. You define it in the template, and then you call it basically. And then to put it on the page, whether you define it or you're using an existing template, it's just, and most of the time you're using an existing template, right? So, bam, I just want to cry, it's so great.
No.
Yeah, so
Well, Joomla, it's like you gotta